Hello friends, it's been a while, quite a while I would say. Some of you may have read my blog post Hectic November, describing my life in the last month and so, and it took quite some time to sort all these things out, so eventually, finally, time for another video. Some of you may know that I made a repertoire based on the Queen's Gambit Declined for the excellent learning site Chessable, and also my repertoire being available to the readers of my inner circle. So this time I would like to address a few questions that were asked by a reader of mine called Alexander Firmes from Germany. And he asked quite a few important questions about the Queen's Gambit Declined, and I would like to address those in order to explain why I chose the Queen's Gambit Declined. So I'll just read his questions and address them one by one. So first he asks, why do you like the opening? How long do you play it? Well, the Queen's Gambit Declined is actually the latest addition to my repertoire. I think I started analyzing it more seriously some 6 years ago, more or less, even though it did arise in some of my earlier games via the semi-Slav. So just to explain, after c6, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, 6, and now a lot of people take, and we get the exchange variation of the Queen's Gambit Declined. So actually I did study this before 2011 or even 10. So a little bit of history here, why and how I arrived at the Queen's Gambit Declined. I started my career as a King's Indian player, as a lot of young players do, right? So I played it for a very long time. But then as time went, I felt the need to expand my repertoire, and then I went to the Grunfeld, which I quite like, and I would say even I love it platonically, even though my results with it were not that great. Then I slowly migrated towards more solid, not really solid, but more, let's say, less dynamic openings like a Nimzo and the Queen's Indian, which I played extensively in the some 2004, 2005, 2006, this period. After that, I realized actually that I did not like the Queen's Indian that much, because I started to feel that I need a stronger central presence with black, meaning that I want a pawn in the center, not just pieces controlling the central squares d5, e4 like in the Queen's Indian, but I prefer a pawn there. So I went to the semi-Slav complex, probably influenced by Anand. At that time he was playing the semi-Slav with great success. Remember his match with Kramnik in 2008. So I went to the semi-Slav, and I played the semi-Slav for quite a while, and eventually I arrived at the Queen's Gambit Declined. So why? I liked it actually. I liked it, and one of the important points of the Queen's Gambit as compared to the Slav is that in the Slav white can just take, and this is why a lot of people are put off from playing the Slav, while in the Queen's Gambit that is not really possible. So addressing another question by Alexander, any worries with it, boring or drawish tendencies? So not really, actually. I would say the Slav, even though if white does not play the exchange, is quite dynamic and interesting, has this big drawback of the exchange variation. Not that black cannot play for a win there, but it's symmetrical, right? Well, you don't get that in the Queen's Gambit. And even though in the Queen's Gambit, let's say something like this, okay, and now cd, White can play the exchange variation. This is far from being drawish or boring, because the asymmetrical pawn structure always offers ways to play for more than just equality. For those of you who are skeptical, I would like to draw your attention to two very important classical games. One of them is Bobotsov Petrosian from the Lugano Olympiad 1968, and the other one is Portish Kasparov from the Skellefteå tournament in 1989. You will see how in both these games the black players managed to outplay very strong opponents from simple positions arising from this Carlsbad structure. So next question, which are the benefits in comparison to other openings against d4? Well, the main benefit I see is that is the solidity, in a sense that the Queen's Gambit does not depend so much on forcing opening lines, and you can play it more or less without following the latest developments of theory. So, and also it's like a safety net in a sense that if you're playing other openings, you don't feel like your main opening, which may be, I don't know, the King's Indian or the Grunfeld or whatever, you don't feel like playing dynamic opening or an opening that requires more energy. You can always fall back on the Queen's Gambit declined, which can be played in a more, let's say, lazy, way. In a sense, you just play d5, e6, bishop e7, knight f6 to castle, more or less, and you get a decent position with harmonious development, which can be then played relatively easily. So this is what I see as the main redeeming feature of the Queen's Gambit declined. It's solid, it's relatively easy, and it's practically guaranteed to give you a good middle game position. Next question, is it more for the positional player? I wouldn't say a positional player, I would say it's a more positional opening. Sometimes even tactical players want to play a more positional opening. This obviously depends on many factors, like I mentioned before: the energy before the game, the tournament situation, the opponent you are playing against. In modern chess, it pays to be flexible in the opening, because with computers and massive preparation, it's easy to prepare against one single opening, and therefore it's important to have not only at least two openings at your disposal, but also it's useful if these openings are different in nature. So, for example, depending again on all these factors that I mentioned, you can choose a King's Indian, let's say, or a Grunfeld or a Benoni or Benko Gambit or something, or in another situation you may use the Queen's Gambit declined, where you have other strategy for that given game. Does it suit my style of play? Well, style of play, again, you may define yourself as a attacking, aggressive, tactical player, but then again there are days when this will not work. You may not always be able to play in this manner, depending on various circumstances. So style of play is also a rather vague concept, because it varies. Also varies not only from game to game, but also varies with age. It varies, it may change with depending on the tournament situation, and so on. So, like I said, this is closely connected to what I mentioned before. It pays to have options. So, by all means, you can play all the openings you want, but having an option, a solid option, is always a very good and useful thing to have. So I think this answers most of his questions, and I hope this will help you understand the benefits of the Queen's Gambit decline. My personal experience with it has been excellent. the case may be of me maturing as a chess player and my style evolving from positions where I give up the center, like in the King's Indian, then going on to the Grunfeld, where there is giving up the center but then dynamically attacking it, then going on to the Nimzo Queen's Indian combination of controlling the center with the pieces, then going on to the Semislav, where there is a presence in the center, although often black abandons it, like this, playing dc4 and then attacking it sideways like b4 and c5, and eventually arriving at the Queen's Gambit, where there is a solid presence in the center, and black is actually fighting for the center in the most direct terms. So these are my general ideas about the Queen's Gambit declined. I hope you find them useful, and I also hope I'll make my next video sooner rather than later. Well, thanks for watching, and bye.